It was a quiet day on the corner of Maple Street when people noticed something strange. A thin, exhausted German shepherd, its ribs visible under its dirty fur, struggled to walk forward. Between its cracked jaws, the dog held an old, dirty doll. The sight was heartbreaking, and whispers of pity filled the air as more people stopped to watch. A soft puff, struggling to watch. "A poor thing," said Mrs. Tucker, a kind old lady who lived nearby. "Look at the way it's holding that doll. It's protecting it, isn't it?" A young woman brought some food and water, hoping to help. She bent down gently, but the dog growled softly and held the doll tighter, as if afraid someone might take it away. "Guess he's not hungry," she said, with a mix of concern and amusement. The dog's eyes turned toward the police station down the street. Slowly and shakily, it began walking in that direction, its legs trembling under its weight. People moved aside, watching in awe as the determined dog marched forward. Even as its body seemed ready to give up, it clung tightly to the doll, as though it carried a message too important to lose. Instead, it followed the dog. When the dog finally reached the police station, it collapsed in the doorway, too weak to take another step. But even then, its jaws stayed clenched around the doll. Inside, Officer Clark noticed the commotion and came to see what was happening. "Get some water," he called to another officer. He placed the dog on a blanket and gently offered it some water. The dog drank cautiously, pausing every now and then to glance at the doll. Its behavior puzzled Clark, but before he could think too much, the dog's head shot up. It started growling softly, its gaze locked on the wall across the room. The wall was covered with posters of missing persons. The dog's growls turned into barking, sharp and insistent. Then, for the first time, it dropped the doll. Clark's curiosity grew. What was the dog trying to tell him? The dog limped toward the wall, stopping near a poster of a missing girl named Alice Harper. She was just 7 years old, her picture showing soft brown curls and a bright smile. The dog's gaze stayed fixed on Alice's photo, and it let out a soft whine, a sound so sorrowful it sent chills through the room. Clark picked up the doll and examined it. It was old and worn, but it had a blue dress with a small tear on one arm. He looked back at Alice's photo. In her hands, she held a doll that looked exactly the same. His heart sank. The dog barked again and nudged Clark's leg, urging him toward the door. It was clear now, this dog wasn't just wandering. It had come here for a reason. "All right, buddy, let's see what you're trying to show me," Clark said, grabbing his flashlight. He followed the dog outside, the doll still in his hand. The dog, despite its earlier exhaustion, moved with surprising determination. It led Clark through streets and alleys, moving as if it knew exactly where it was going. After what felt like an endless journey, they stopped in front of an old, crumbling building hidden in a neglected alley. "Who does that?" The building was eerie, with ivy climbing its walls and windows boarded up. Clark hesitated, but pushed the door open. The inside smelled of mold and decay. The dog brushed past him, heading toward a staircase that led to the basement. Clark followed, his flashlight illuminating the dark, narrow staircase. At the bottom, the air was damp and cold. The room was filled with old mattresses, scattered clothes, and half-empty food cans. It was clear someone had been living there, but not in comfort. This was a hidden prison. In one corner, Clark spotted a pile of children's backpacks, some decorated with cartoon characters. His heart tightened as he realized they belonged to kids. Among the scattered items, he found passports and IDs, all for children no older than 10. The horror of the situation hit him like a wave. The dog barked again, its gaze fixed on a small, hidden door. Clark approached cautiously, his stomach twisting with dread. What could be behind it? The gravity of this situation was only too clear now. The dog sniffed at the doorframe, and its owner, whoever it was, thought he was home. The dog paused and frowned. Taking a deep breath, he opened the door and stepped inside. What he found next would uncover a chilling truth, one that would explain the dog's desperate journey and change everything Clark thought he knew about this case. Children being smuggled and kept in places like these. Whoever's behind this isn't just operating on our turf. They're connected and they're organized. Clark's voice was grim as he laid out the evidence. The chief's brow furrowed as he scanned the photos and documents. "You're telling me this could be international?" The shotgunner slowly shook his head. "Oh no, they're headquartered in Florida." Clark gave a solemn nod. "We need more than just our local resources, Chief. We need Interpol on this. Every sign points to a larger ring. We can't risk missing the bigger picture." Chief Roberts sighed, his gaze lingering on the evidence. "I'll make the call. We'll start by looping in Interpol and any agencies with open trafficking cases. This is bigger than any of us imagined." With the go-around, the station transformed overnight into a hive of relentless activity. Phones rang incessantly as officers coordinated with federal and international contacts. Desks filled with notes, maps, and timelines as Clark stayed immersed, pushing every lead they uncovered. The frayed map on the wall became a patchwork of pinpoints marking potential safe houses, trafficking routes, and connections to other known criminals. It became evident that the case was only beginning to reveal its true extent. Max, now officially stationed at the precinct, made his quiet rounds. He seemed to sense the urgency, his sharp eyes following every movement. One officer placed a small bowl of water near his makeshift bed, but Max barely looked away from the flurry of activity. Clark, noticing Max's calm alertness, knelt beside him, scratching the scruffy fur behind Max's ears. He murmured, "You found this for us, buddy. This is as much your case as it is ours." The late hours stretched into dawn. Clark pushed through fatigue, driven by thoughts of the families affected. As a father, he couldn't ignore the anguish of parents whose children had been taken. The thought of his own daughter safe at home made him more resolute. This was personal. "Donnie! Our parents, our curse, our blessing." By morning, the precinct prepared to expand the investigation with federal support. Leads from neighboring towns revealed fragments of connections. Clark and his team readied themselves for new trails. Max sat by Clark's side, his tail thumping occasionally. "Seems like he was meant to be here, huh?" Officer Evans remarked, watching Max. Clark glanced at the dog, pride evident in his voice. "He's got the instincts. It's like he knows what we're looking for." Evans chuckled. "I've seen a lot of strange things in this job, but this one takes the cake." He shrugged. Clark's faint smile faded as he looked at Max. "Strange times call for strange partners." "We're not done yet, buddy." A full week of covert surveillance led the team to an abandoned warehouse, a suspected transit point for smuggling children abroad. Officers worked in shifts, tracking every vehicle and shadowy figure. By the end of the week, the evidence was irrefutable. The decision was made to proceed with a high-stakes operation, with special forces on standby. Clark stood at the edge of the waterfront with Max, the dog who had proven instrumental. Max waited beside him, steady and loyal, his sharp eyes scanning the pier. Officers in unmarked cars awaited their orders. The night was quiet, damp, and tense. The crackle of the earpiece broke the silence. Targets approaching the warehouse. Clark signaled to Max, who straightened immediately. Together, they watched a dark SUV roll up to the warehouse. This was the vehicle they had been tracking, believed to be transporting children. Max's nose twitched as he tracked the scent. Clark leaned down, whispering, "This is it, buddy. Let's find them." Abruptly, the voice called out, "Operator, where are you finding?" "It's all here," Clark said. When the order came, the team moved swiftly. Clark and Max followed Sergeant Thomas to the side entrance. Max darted forward, sniffing the ground and pausing at a corner of the rear wall. Clark signaled the team, and they spread out, each officer covering the next. The quiet was shattered by the crack of gunfire. Clark held tightly to Max's leash, guiding him through tear gas and chaos. Through the haze, he saw a group of children huddled in the corner. Relief surged through him, but he stayed vigilant. Steering Max toward the children, he called softly, "Stay close to Max." The dog's calm presence seemed to reassure the frightened kids. In the chaos, the gang leader emerged, raising his weapon. Clark froze, but Max bolted, barking fiercely. The man stumbled back, giving Clark and the officers a crucial moment to act. Within minutes, the gang was subdued. The children, including Alice, were safely evacuated. At the station, Alice sat in a small room, clutching her old, worn doll. Her parents waited anxiously outside. When they were finally allowed in, the reunion was immediate and tearful. Alice clung to her mother, who murmured words of comfort, while her father held them both tightly. A movement at the door caught Alice's eye. There stood Max, his fur matted and eyes weary. He hesitated, as if unsure he belonged. "Max!" Alice cried, breaking free to embrace him. Max nuzzled her fiercely, his tail wagging for the first time in days. Her parents watched in stunned silence. tears streaming. Max had brought their daughter back. As Alice hugged Max, she noticed her doll dangling from his mouth. She gasped, taking it gently. "He kept it for me," she whispered. She sobbed into the pillows. Her mother's voice broke. "Yes, sweetheart. Max never gave up on you. He brought you home." She made herself sigh, turned over on her side, and fell to sleep. In the days that followed, the town buzzed with the story of Max Anasiris, the unassuming hero. At the station, Clark couldn't finish a cup of coffee without someone mentioning the dog. In one case, it made its way to the town hall. "Most dogs would go for food first," Officer Mears remarked. But he held onto that doll like he knew it mattered. He laid his head on his arms, and cat barked and understood and clapped as he sat there. Clark nodded, his gaze on Max. This wasn't just instinct. He knew. Max the scruffy shepherd had done more than anyone could have imagined. He had saved lives, reunited a family, and reminded everyone of the extraordinary bond between humans and their loyal companions. And now he could finally rest, knowing his job was done.